Welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Klein, co-founder and CEO, along with my husband and company visionary, Devin Klein.
And together, with our amazing team, we are going to help you push past your limits, not just physically in our gyms, but right here, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on the Burn Bootcamp podcast.
Together, we will take on challenges and break through barriers to transform into the best possible version of ourselves. We are more than a gym. We are a community. Your community. Let's go, Burn Nation.
All right, Burn Nation, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode 508, Trisha,
That's
of
crazy.
the Burn Bootcamp podcast. This one's going to be a good one.
This is going to be a good one.
We're talking about how we stay disciplined when motivation dies. I don't know about you, but for me, motivation comes and goes. And, sometimes I'm like, why am I a little bit more unmotivated today than I was yesterday, or motivated? It's just this fleeting thing. And it's a question that I know I get at the gym all the time, is like, how do you stay motivated? What is your relationship with motivation?
Oh, it's the same way. And I think I've, over the years learned a lot about how it's all on me. I can't rely on anyone else to give me motivation. And so whenever anyone says that, my response back to it's all on you. It's what the story you're telling in your head.
Yeah, the story. That's such a good one. The story and the state that you're in. We're going to talk all about motivation, inspiration, and how it really works. This episode will be largely about psychology, something that I always kind of joke and say like I'm an armchair psychologist, but I've gone through some things in my life and I've been able to kind of dig myself out of many, many holes over the years, and only been able to do so through actually understanding like the structure behind our mind and behind psychology, and really the intersection of that with philosophy. But before we do that, I wanted to just, kind of show off this camo crew neck that I have going on here. This one is comfy, I'm gonna tell you that. And if I am trying to blend in, if I'm trying to, you can't see, can you even see me? Am I just a floating head? You can go to shop.burnbootcamp.com because we have all types of activewear on there. And we have a brand new promo code for you. It's called Burn Pod, right?
Yes, it is.
And what happens when they use promo code Burn Pod?
You get 10% off your whole order. So go ahead and use it. Shop.burnbootcamp.com.
This is a unisex, by the way. It is for men and women. Do we have there's the picture of both of us. There's Justin. Hi, Justin. And then let's show the women's version. Oh, look at that. It looks beautiful on her and then handsome on him. This one is very soft. And, I like to wear it over the top of my training gear right before I train. Kind of pull up to the gym, with some swag, take some layers off, and then, you're good to go. Burn Pod, okay? And also, if you order more than, I believe it's $150 worth of stuff on the shop, then you get free shipping too. Yeah, $150. So
Mine's on there as well.
Nutrition.
You like this one?
Ooh, let me see. Yeah,
And
talk
look,
about that one.
You can pair underneath that, so you're a whole vibe, like this whole green vibe.
Ooh, we do have a green vibe going on. I like it.
It's a nice shirt. It feels nice too.
Okay, well, you got it. So you can buy this and that, and then some Burn Nutrition, and then, you're at $150 and you get free shipping. That's what it is. Okay, guys, we're really excited to jump in the podcast today. How we stay disciplined when motivation dies is the topic. We're going to talk about mental resilience, stress. Stress is such a buzzword, but it's the sleeper to why maybe some of us aren't getting the results that we desire. Setbacks. We're going to talk about the grittiness that you need, just the psychological makeup that you might need to really overcome, or the framing or the perspective you might need to overcome some of the stress. We're going to talk about your mindset when you're training in the gym and building habits, really like rituals, the difference between the two things, habits and rituals that can strengthen your mind, and ultimately trying to land the plane here, practicality in everyday life. How do you be mentally resilient? What are the practical things that we're doing on a daily basis in order to get there? And we've got some clips that we're going to show you from some very smart people. Trisha and I are going to react to those clips as well, give our opinion on them. And we're going to start off with, what is mental resilience? Okay, Trisha, when you think about mental resilience, that can be very easily be some buzzword. Like, I want to be more mentally resilient. Somebody can have that as a goal, but they don't actually know what they're asking sometimes, most times. What do you think?
I think that it's your ability to overcome like the idea of like trying to overcome an obstacle. So your ability to keep going when everything else is telling you to stop. That to me is mental resilience, and you can apply that in so many different levels. It can be something that's really hard in your life, or just something like as easy as just getting out of bed, right? So there's just different levels of it.
Yeah, and there's always science behind everything, and we're gonna unpack a little bit of that, but we're just not gonna like kill you with different concepts and different words, because we really want this to be about practicality. How do you actually hit the ground running, and how do you incorporate strategies in your life that can help you build your mental resilience? We got some clips. I want to play the first one here, Mental Toughness by Dr. Huberman. Let's go ahead and roll that clip first.
It's also very beneficial to be able to tolerate a lot of stress and still think clearly. And that's because, again, stress is inevitable. There are going to be times in which stress is going to hit, and we need to maintain clarity of thought in order to make good decisions, perform well on exams, say the right thing, not say the wrong thing, etc. There's a tool from physiology that allows us to do that. And this is a tool that you use not in the moments of stress, but away from stress, in which you can train up or enhance your stress threshold to become more gritty and resilient, to basically increase your mental toughness. It involves what's called cyclic hyperventilation. What you're going to do is you're going to take 25 deep inhales and 25 exhales. And of course, you're not going to do 25 inhales and then 25 exhales. You're going to inhale and exhale 25 times, which will definitely increase the amount of adrenaline, epinephrine in your brain and body. In fact,
Okay, so we talked about breath work, and that's just one strategy. That's one, the cyclical breathing. It's one strategy in order for you to, really what he talked about there was in the anterior adrenal gland. You have norepinephrine, or noradrenaline, it's also called, and this is this is a chemical that's released when you want to fight or flight. You've heard fight or flight before? Okay, so all the strategies, including the one that Huberman just talked about around breath work, it's all to increase your tolerance for stress. And what do we mean when we say increase your tolerance for stress? It's to be able to kind of dump noradrenaline or dump it's the same thing, norepinephrine, to be able to dump that and to be able to tolerate it or build up your kind of mental toleration muscles or your stress threshold. Now, Trisha, you know this just as well as I did. We just got done with a live workout here. And, our favorite strategy to increase your stress threshold is what?
Working out.
Right? And not only just working out, right? Because activity and exercise are different than training. They're different things. Activity is very leisure. Yeah. I can go out and I can walk, and that's good for you. And I walk pretty much every day, but that's activity. That's not going to increase your stress threshold or your mental resilience. Then you might have exercise, which I would call undirected, maybe haphazard working out. I go in and I do some strength training moves in the gym, but I don't really put it together in a way that's demanding. I'm exercising, I'm almost to training, but I'm not quite there. And then training is directed. It has an outcome, a measured outcome at the end of, we call it mesocycles at Burn Bootcamp, which is AKA periodization. And we do group periodization at Burn. And you're going to have, this outcome that's at the end, and you're going to have these PRs, these personal records, that these directives, these mandates for us are training. So there is a difference, and I just don't want anyone to confuse like exercise with activity with training and to say, I should be more mental resilient because I'm training every day, when in reality, you might be exercising or you might be doing activity, which are great things, but it's not the same. The strategy, like when Andrew Huberman talks about cyclical breathing, he's not talking about just normal breathing. He's talking about a directed outcome, 25 inhales, 25 exhales, oscillating between the two in order to become more tolerant of stress. And so you hear that all the time, don't we?
Well, we do. And I think, you brought it to our attention during the live. You were training us, and today's protocol was core strength and conditioning, and we had to count our reps. And Devin said, this is why we want you to count, is because we want you to stay in the moment, which is then intentional training, right? I'm intentionally counting my reps, making sure I'm pushing through those hard reps. I am self-motivating because I know I want to get to that 20, 40, whatever that rep count is. And so that's intentional training.
And there's so many ways that we can become mentally resilient. The most obvious way, and my favorite way, obviously, is introducing training into your life, stepping into the gym, knowing that you're going to encounter an exercise or a movement or a pattern that causes you to second guess yourself. It might cause you to have a little bit of doubt, maybe some anxiety, maybe a little bit of fear, maybe sometimes anger if you can't perform the movement that you want to yet. Like your mind can do it, but your body can't yet. This is an opportunity for us on a daily basis to gain mental resilience, but there's so many ways to do it. Breath work, like Huberman was just talking about, hot, cold contrast, dipping yourself in cold water. I do this every day, going into, 180 degrees plus in a dry or a wet sauna, training, even subtle things like just asking for what you want.
Yeah. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's a quote that's on our walls. If you're a Burn Boot Camp member, it's probably on your wall. It's one of my all-time favorite quotes. I remember like that feeling the first time I read that and like it actually sunk in. And that's what all of this is about, is putting yourself in a position to be uncomfortable, because that's how you grow and that's how you become more mentally resilient.
And so you can do all those things. Okay, here's the second part of this. You can do all those things. You can go hot, cold contrast. You can train, not just do activity. You can ask for what you want in life. You can be bold about the asks that you have. You can do all these things. But if you don't have a perspective in which you're doing these things with the ultimate outcome to become more mentally resilient, now you're still undirected. You're doing them, but you're not making those neurological connections. We have neuroplasticity. That means the brain can change. It can be manipulated over time based on how you think. There's this nerdy term called cognitive reappraisal in psychology, and all that really means is that I have, my cognition, or my prefrontal cortex, where it's kind of the CEO of the brain. I'm able to reappraise or reevaluate the circumstances in my life, or reassociate or reassign meanings to them. For example, as a kid, I was abused as a child. Now, does that really mean that I deserved it and I was a kid that was supposed to be beat because I was a bad kid? Or does that mean that my parents might have been telling themselves a bad story, been in a bad state, and they were taking their anger out on the most vulnerable thing that they could find to make themselves feel better? There was a period of time, a cognitive reappraisal that I had to go through, and I go through it, guys, every single day. I've been through a lot of trauma in my life, and we all have, right? We all have our own version of our own mountain to climb, and yours is no steeper than mine. It's no different. But what we so often do is forget that God gave us a brain not only to think future, but also to go back. It's like a tape recorder. You have a memory, and that memory records tape, and then you get to go back and you actually get to replay that tape. And as you get older, you get to reassign the meaning to the events that happen into your life. When I'm 12 years old, of course I'm going to say, like, why me? I'm not deserving of love, or else my parents wouldn't do this type of stuff for me. But if I don't have any cognitive reappraisal, and if I don't go back and use my brain for what God made it for, and to say, hey, why actually do I feel that way? Then I could turn up being 42, 52, 62 years old, and this is the case more often than it's not the case, and I could still have the mentality of a 12-year-old kid, because I never actually decided to stop and be intentional about my mental resiliency. And I never really realized that it's not only the strategies that I'm using today, the training I can use, the hot, cold contrast that I can use, the asking for things in a bold fashion that I can do on a daily basis that creates mental resilience, but it's also, and more importantly, going back and redefining the past. Don't you see so many people that are still defined by some version of themselves that was years and years and years ago?
Yeah, it's self-limiting beliefs. And that's the hard part is, like you said, Devin, you have to have the awareness to make the change. And I think if you have that awareness, you have like this moment in your life when you had like that aha moment. Because I remember for the longest time, I've also gone through a lot in my childhood, and I'm still dealing with some of that stuff as it comes back up. They're my own personal triggers. But I also know that what happened to me in the past doesn't define me who I am today, right? It's made me stronger, and I use it to make me stronger. I remember, some of the challenging times in my life, whether they were really hard times or just me getting up on stage for the first time talking in front of people is really uncomfortable, but I did it. And so I take those moments of time, and that's how I've built confidence throughout it all. So I think you just have to have the awareness that it's the self-limiting beliefs that you're putting on yourself.
Yeah, and this practice in psychology is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I've never done it per se, how most people will do it, which is to hire a CBT specialist and go through this skill of enhancing or the skill of reframing or reshaping the past and making that front of your brain, that prefrontal cortex, making that stronger and overriding the amygdala, where the kind of emotional brain. So you can actually, that's what neuroplasticity is you can actually rewire your brain to just overcome by nature. That's who you naturally become, and you can actually build that skill up. It's a skill that you can build, and many of us need to do it through cognitive behavioral therapy. I did not, because I wanted to understand how to do that for other people. And I'm not claiming to be like a therapist, but guys, by any reason or anything like that. Like, I just wanted to understand enough at a baseline to be able to help people to a certain extent and then point them to a professional when needed. But I went through this on myself, right? And I, over the years, would just learn a concept and then integrate that concept into my life. And then it was really hard doing it that way, and it took a really long time, but you can do it on your own, but you have to have education there, and you have to understand, like, there's structure and there's actual science, and there's things that somebody else can teach you, or you can go find out and teach yourself on your own. But at a certain point in time, talking to somebody else is probably, for like 99.9% of us, it's probably what you need to be doing. And I have a mental performance coach who, isn't a cognitive therapist by any means, but we do a lot of that same work. Mm-hmm. And so his name is Derek Grant, and he really helps fill that void for me. So when you do all of this, now you have a stage for like emotional regulation, and now the things, you can define what things and events and experiences mean to you, and then you can have associated emotion to that.
I have an example, and I'm kind of going to pose it to you as a question, Devin. So you and Morgan built the culture around, Burn Boot Camp. We always talk about championship culture, and in the gym, you know this to be true. Our trainers are always encouraging us to do more. So I'm thinking about a moment, because I've done more on stage where people are like, I could never go speak in front of people. But then I now think about back in the gym, and I remember saying, I could never bicep curl 20 pounds. And then the trainer comes up to you and you bicep curl 25 pounds, and then you go do the hard thing outside. You always say what we're doing in the gym transcends these four walls, and that's exactly what I think we're saying right now, is the belief that you're putting in yourself, because you're doing those hard reps in the gym. You're getting that self-belief to then, when you go get presented this opportunity to do something that you didn't think you could do, you're remembering a time, like in the gym, that you did something hard, and then you go do it. So everything that we're doing in the gym it means more than just lifting the weights.
Yeah, 100% it does. And when you kind of pose that to me, my mind goes all the way back to, when was the first time throughout this Burn Boot Camp journey in which I kind of had to, use this reappraisal. And I actually go back to the very first week. If you've listened to the podcast for any amount of time, you've probably heard some rendition of this story, but I'll keep it very short. This was like real time cognitive appraisal when I moved to Charlotte because Morgan was working with Kellogg's, the cereal company. And she got a promotion here to Charlotte, and I was down in Florida working at a box gym, and I decided to start Burn. Well, I couldn't get a lease, and so we started in a parking lot, and I spent the last $600 that I had personally while Morgan was supporting our lifestyle. I spent my last $600 on dumbbells and yoga mats. And I remember marketing hardcore, like every day, all day for 12 hours, knocking on every door up and down Statesville Road, every business, every Twitter handle at the time or email news desk I could get my hand on. And I was hardcore guerrilla grassroots marketing. And I did that for 90 days, which felt like 2 years, and ended up, getting to a point where I had, 90 to 100 people like signed up, like that said they were going to come. Mm-hmm. Well, I start on a Monday and I have a handful. And then a Tuesday is a little bit less. And then a Wednesday is a little bit less. By the Thursday, the fourth day that we were in, the fourth day of Burn Boot Camp's history, I showed up to the 5:30 a.m. and nobody showed up. And I broke my little heart, if I'm honest with you. I had this moment of this fork in the road moment of, what is the deal here, right? If I would have leaned on my past experiences and said, hey, well, you're not worth it, so you're not worthy of love, so that's why nobody showed up. I could have very easily done that. But without even knowing like what the fancy term cognitive reappraisal meant in the moment, I did this real time. And, you know, I can remember specifically, I wish I had photo and video of it, but those were limited back then. And I sat in the parking lot just being like, here's this fork in the road. I've been working my butt off to try to get people in the door and nobody showed up. What does this mean? This either means that I'm not worth it and I'm a bad trainer and an even worse marketer and I should just hang it up and go, do something else. Or no, you're a badass trainer and you are. And so there's just a different problem. And so I did my workout and I decided that I was worthy of being a trainer and I was worthy of having people show up because I had some references down when I was at the box gym in Florida. I was killing it down there. And I knew at that moment that I needed to become a marketer, right? I needed to become a trainer, but also a businessman, because if nobody knew about Burn Boot Camp, then I could never change anybody's life. And so in that moment, we became a marketing company whose product is confidence, not a fitness company whose product was memberships, because clearly that strategy didn't work very well. And so that's kind of an example of real-time reappraisal, if you will. And I didn't even know what it meant at the time. So a lot of us are doing this or not. A lot of us are taking the other fork in the road too, but you come to the fork in the road and it's like, what are you going to believe? Are you going to believe the version of yourself in the future that you're inspired by, or are you going to believe the conditioned version of your past that somebody else told you, what you were and what you could be and what you could accomplish, and are you going to use that uninspired version?
Yeah.
So that's where my mind goes, and so I hope that you guys hear me, and I hope that you have a situation in your life right now in which you are at the fork in the road and you have a decision to make. And this might be the biggest decision of your life, like that one was for me. This might be the decision that can change it all, that can get us to a point where we're here today in the studio. And Trisha has a little microcosm of that as we are going through our workout today. There's one more clip that I want to play. We'll react to it. David Goggins is his name. If you haven't heard of it, Goggins, he is a mentally strong dude and an inspiration to millions. He has a definition of mental toughness. Roll clip.
For mental toughness. Every athlete, everybody in the world is looking for mental toughness. The only way you gain mental toughness is to do things you're not happy doing. If you continue doing things that you're satisfied and that make you happy, you're not getting stronger. You're staying where you're at. Either you're getting better or you're getting worse. You're not staying the same. Everybody's looking for mental.
So stress and setbacks and grit, I mean, these are the things that he's talking about as we move forward here in the podcast. What do you think about, Trisha, when you hear do things that you're not happy with? What are some things that you do that don't make you happy, but you do it anyway?
Well, I think I have a busy schedule. I think this is just a really small example, and I know I've talked about my workout schedule on the podcast before. I now have shifted my workouts to being at, I do go to 5:30 a.m. camp on a regular basis. But when I first started doing that, it was hard. I didn't want to get up at 4:30 in the morning. And so I think, doing the hard thing of, I could have just said, well, I have meetings all day, and I could have made an excuse to not rearrange my schedule and get up a little bit earlier and go work out. I could have just not worked out, and that would have been the easy thing to do. But I know for me, and that's the story that I told myself, is you will be happier if you can just get into this rhythm of getting up. And now I love my 5:30 a.m. workouts. And I tell everyone, like, you know, the new people that come into 5, they're like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm like, yeah, I promise it gets easier, because that's the story that you're telling yourself. No one actually really wants to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Like, your bed is cozy, right? I understand. But then that feeling that you get about doing that hard thing first, it just gives you so much motivation and so much confidence going into the day that I couldn't imagine starting my day any other way than doing the hard thing first.
Stress is a part of everyday life, and it's going to be a part of your life. Wishing for it to go away isn't going to work. Setbacks are going to be a part of your life. It wouldn't feel so good if things weren't so bad. We wouldn't have, you know, rainbows without the storms. And grit is just that attitude that you take. There's controllables and there's uncontrollables. 3 things that you do control. We call this the inner world in the Burn Bootcamp book. You can get that on Amazon if you're interested. We call it the inner world: attitude, effort, and belief. These are the things that you can control. I control what I believe. Let's stop there. Number 1, I think where I see the majority of people go south in their life is when they are not controlling their own beliefs, and when they think the thoughts, the universal thoughts that, you know, I'm not a fitness person, or that's too hard for me, or I could never do that. Those aren't your individual thoughts. And when you take the unconscious universal thoughts that every single person has, everyone has had that thought of doubt, of shame, of those are not your thoughts to own. You do not get to own those thoughts. It is very ego driven to think that you're the only person that has these problems and has these thoughts. And when you lean into the fact that things are so bad only for me, what you're leaning away from is a delayed reactivity, or what the yogis call the great gap. The difference, the time period between the thought that you have and then the behavior that you actually go do based on that thought. So if I believe, oh, I'm not a fitness person and I don't have any delayed reactivity time for me to like pause between stimulus and response, and the ability to create the space before reacting impulsively, if I don't intentionally have this gap, right, this delayed reactivity, then I'm just going to be always bound to what everyone has always been bound to, which is having the thought and then taking it as my own and saying, this is mine, this isn't the thought, this is my thought, therefore my life is bad because I have this thought. You don't get to own that thought. You don't get to say, hey, you know, my life is terrible because of this and that thing. You don't get to just say that as if you're the only person ever who has had those thoughts. No, this is the thought, the universal thought. We've got to separate the two. The thoughts need to ride away in the sunset, in your mind. Your thoughts are much different, way fewer and farther in between. Thousands of thoughts that we have every single day, the vast majority of them are not yours. They're just human thoughts. They're fear, doubt, shame-driven thoughts that have for years and years and years and millennia have kept us safe from things. That's the reason why we have these thoughts, to keep us safe from things.
Isn't it crazy that I was just thinking as you were talking that a lot of the thoughts that we have are the negative ones? Like, I don't sit there in my daily habits and say, I am so great. I am so smart. I am so amazing. Like, no, it's like, oh, you could have done better. Oh, that was embarrassing. Oh, next time do this differently. Like, that's crazy. And you have to have the awareness to stop it. Otherwise you go down this rabbit hole and you have to shift it, and you have to intentionally say, I am great, or like give yourself those what's the word I'm looking for? In the morning, you give yourself affirmations, positive affirmations. Mm-hmm. I am a firm believer, because if you don't intentionally do it, your thoughts aren't going to just do it for you. They're
not going to do it for you. You have these these patterns, right? And Tony Robbins calls them the pattern interrupters. In psychology, it's like maladaptive patterns. They're patterns that that you have that are unconscious that you've never really stopped to, that you could slow down to think about, but you haven't slowed down to think about them. And so we're talking about this delayed reactivity, this great gap. And this, I want you to close your eyes real quick. And I want you to envision this kind of great gap of thoughts. Like all these thoughts are going to come into your brain, and then you're going to have behaviors on the other side. And when we get in trouble is when we have thought to behavior immediately, right? Thought to behavior. You're conditioning your body, because remember, your brain is neuroplastic. You are conditioning your brain to react to your surrounding environments. The same way you can condition your brain to react to your surrounding environments is the same way that you can condition your brain to break these maladaptive patterns and to have this delayed reactivity install. Like, think about it this way. You can install the great gap, this void, this dark black void at which the thought comes in. It goes into this black void, and every thought goes there. And you don't react. You kind of call this slowing down. Don't overreact, Devin. If you're going to get in an impulsive argument with somebody, this is overreaction. The things that Andrew Huberman was talking about, cyclical breathing, things we're talking about, demanding training, hot-cold contrast. These mental resilience training tools are the tools that can strengthen your gap, right? That can help you say, all right, these thoughts are going to come in. I'm going to let them sit in this gap, and I'm just going to let them sit. I'm not going to behave in alignment with my thoughts. They're going into the void, and that's where they stay. When you're sitting there and you're in the cold water and it's 37 degrees, or if you don't have a cold tub, you take a cold shower and it's 55 degrees. And that cold water, it might even be worse in the shower. It's like trickling down your body, and every water drop is like making you get the shivers. Everybody wants to jump out of the water. Everybody. That's the universal human thought. Get out of the water. No. Let that thought fall into the great void. And then and only then do you get to rise up on the other side with your behavior. And that behavior is actually what creates mental resiliency. Because now then I become somebody who can do hard things. I didn't listen to this voice. I didn't listen to this thought that isn't mine. I didn't act like it was mine. I just let it be. That's my word in my life right now, is just be. I am a future-oriented person. Big ambition. 99% of my past life, I lived in the future. And I'm no longer doing that. I'm just sitting here, just being with you here today, not worried about my schedule for the rest of the day, just trying to get this point across, that when you install the great gap in your life, you install this void where all the thoughts that you have can go into it, then only the behaviors you exude then become the thoughts that are your own. Mm-hmm. Follow what I'm saying there, guys?
Yep. Okay.
All right. Let's roll this clip. This is a great one. This is Angela Duckworth. This is on a TED Talk. She's talking about the power of grit. She explains. Chelsea, can you give us a little, what is this clip explaining?
Yeah, so she's talking about just like the power of grit and how that can get you through any situation that you're going through.
Okay. All right. Let's roll clip.
Grit. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. A few years ago.
What do you pick up on her 30 seconds there, the power of grit?
Well, it was pretty. Your grit is when you're living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. To me, that really stuck out. I actually listened to this whole clip, the TED Talk that she did. I found it really inspiring because it is more about the awareness that you need to have grit. She talks a lot about, you can have high IQ and you can be really, really smart, but that doesn't mean you're going to have grit. grit is actually something that you have to work on, something you have to be intentional about. And so I think that, you know, for those people who out there who might be saying, I can't do the thing, you have to reframe your thought and you have to say, I can do the thing. And I'm going to figure out how I can do the thing. I might mess up. I might, you know, fall on my way there. You're not going to fail. You're just going to fall, pick yourself back up. You're going to learn. You keep going. That's grit, is when you keep on going.
So you mentioned EQ and IQ,
Yeah.
and I think that's such an important part. And then we're going to move on to a new segment here. But IQ is different than EQ. You are born with an IQ. There's no evidence that I can find or that I hear anybody that I trust and find that really studies this stuff on a daily basis for a living that says that you can actually increase your IQ. Now, you can get like better at certain activities by repetition, but IQ, your intelligence quotient, is your ability to solve problems. It's really just the numerical score derived from these kind of standardized tests that measure your cognitive abilities and your ability to solve problems. It's assessing just intelligence. And what I've found in my life is, and I have an average IQ. It's like, you know, I've done way above average things in my life, and Trisha, you have as well. But it's not like Trisha and I are sitting here like rocket scientists, you know, or, you know, the ability to, you know, read a dictionary and regurgitate it to you just off memory. That's high IQ. But what I've realized is that real life goals, real meaningful results, actually, like the vast majority of what you achieve in your life has to do with your EQ, or your emotional quotient. This is your ability to understand and know yourself, to know how you interact with other people, and then how you interact in the environment around you. And one of my favorite books on this is Carol Dweck's Mindset. Can we pull up just a picture of Carol Dweck's Mindset? This is a fundamental book for me, and I wanted to share it with everybody. I read and reread and reread. I love Carol Dweck. And actually, I didn't really even realize this, but she's a colleague of Dr. Andrew Huberman, who has a great podcast. If you guys haven't heard of the Andrew Huberman podcast, there's Mindset right there by Carol Dweck. And this a lot is like a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. But it has a lot to do with like the practicality of EQ and how you actually can increase your EQ. That's the difference between IQ and EQ, is you can increase your EQ. You can become a more emotionally intelligent person, or you can become an emotionally less intelligent person just as easily. And this is where the results happen, because here's how it works in the brain, right? You have this like spinal cord in this brainstem, and the energy flows up the spinal cord through the brainstem. Guess where it hits first? The amygdala. The amygdala is your emotional brain. That's like the limbic brain. That's the monkey mind, people call it. You might have heard Tim Ferriss use that term, the monkey mind, or the lizard brain. You might have heard Seth Godin use the lizard brain before. This is your emotional center. That means all energy, or all thought, because all thought is information, and all information has energy attached to it. So all thought, all information, all energy physically passes through the amygdala before it can reach the prefrontal cortex, which is the CEO of our mind and where all the logic lives. So like, we are emotional beings before we are logical beings, is what I'm saying, which should be great news for you. It should be great news, because we can actually manipulate and get better emotionally by all these things we're talking about, the acts of mental resilience. You can actually override your limbic brain. Remember, the brain has neuroplasticity as one of its many characteristics, and you can you hear people say, rewire your brain. That's actually what you're doing. So yes, you're gonna feel the emotion first, always. You don't have a goal to stop feeling emotion, or to not stop being so emotional. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have that goal. No, you're an emotional being. You should want to feel. I went through a 10-year period where I just tried to not feel. And that's the worst feeling, is to not try to feel. You just shut off that center of your brain, and then you become distant from yourself. You become distant from those around you. You become distant from your environment. And I want you to consider sharpening your emotional intelligence, sharpening how emotional you really are, installing that gap between the thought and your thought, is one of those mechanisms, because you're going to feel the emotion anyway, and only after you feel the emotion can you react cognitively, right? We always do that. We always feel first, and then we think second. Oh, I said this thing that I shouldn't have said yesterday because I felt away and I reacted in the moment, and then I said this thing, and then logically, now that I'm thinking about it, man, that wasn't such a great thing to say in that environment, was it? So EQ versus IQ is something that I wanted to introduce to you today in case you've never heard that before. And if you have, that's just a way that you can think about I don't want you to stop being an emotional being. Okay, Trisha?
No, I agree. And I think when you are in that moment, Devin, you've really helped coach me through this a lot, is like that feeling, because I am an emotional person. I feel a lot of things. A lot of my emotion stems from when I feel like I'm disappointing somebody. So if you can just take a step back and reframe your thoughts on why you're feeling that overwhelming sense, that fight or flight, kind of kicks in, take those deep breaths, do whatever you need to do to kind of center yourself back, so that way you don't make a decision that maybe you actually didn't want to make. Or I'm also trying to not blame other people. Like, my decisions are my decisions, and I don't need to place blame on anyone else. I need to take complete ownership of everything that I do. And so I think that that's just the self-awareness and the EQ. And the more times that you do it, and the more times that you either have someone that can point that out to you and make you pause and stop, you're just going to keep growing. It's like reps in the gym. You have to do the reps to learn and grow and improve. And I think having that correlation and being in fitness helps me then realize and grow outside of the gym too, because I know that I can improve in the gym. So I know that I can also improve outside of the gym as well.
And if you say that I am an emotional person, you're exactly right. But the only thing that makes you more or less emotional than another person is your ability to have delayed reactivity. When you can stop and think before you react, that's actually the act of becoming less emotional. If you have no gap, if you have no void, if your reactivity is not delayed at all and it's instantaneous, if emotion then leads to impulsive behavior, then you are more emotional. It's not that you are an emotional person or I am an emotional person more so than him or her. We are all emotional people. Every single one of us thrives on emotion. People say, like, I'm a logical person. Yeah, you have logic. You might have a higher IQ, but that does not mean that you are an unemotional person. You just might not show it as much as somebody else, but really EQ is you and your relationship with you. Your emotional quotient is centered on how is your relationship with you. And I can promise you right now that all the people that raise their hand and say, no, I'm logical, I'm a very logical person, these are the people that are overriding this emotional skill and actually are the most emotionally distressed people, because then they don't actually get to say it out loud. And they go into this emotional recession with nobody to talk to. And logical people actually don't exist first. We are all emotional first, and then we can apply some certain level of logic after that based on our fixed IQ. But I really want you to understand that your ability to react to yourself, to other people, and to the environment around you is EQ. You can get that better or you can get that worse. You can have more reactivity or less reactivity, but you don't get to say that I'm an emotional person or I'm not an emotional person. That would not be correct, okay? So we're going to go talk about training the mind in the gym. I want to dive into this topic because this is what we do. This is our bread and butter here at Burn Boot Camp. And this is really all about like how discomfort and repetition in discomfort and goal setting in your workouts can help really mirror the resiliency that we need in our life. And like using physical challenges to build emotional intelligence is another way to put it. So Trisha, give your story. How is your emotional intelligence, your ability to have delayed reactivity or to adapt to, the circumstances, what people say to you about you? How has that changed with your camp count as it's grown, as you've done more challenging workouts?
Well, I think, as you were talking in the last segment, just you have to want to do the work. Just like you have to want to do the work in the gym, you have to want to do the work on yourself. And my personal opinion is that it's a lot harder to do the work on yourself, on your mental health than it is on your physical health. So I started with the physical journey. Really, it was, 10 years ago when I became a member at Burn Boot Camp, it was a selfish reason. I wanted my kids to go to Child Watch because I just wanted 45 minutes to myself. But as I put myself in these situations where I was challenging myself and I was competing with myself and I was trying to get better at, double unders. I think for the longest time I was, trying to always hit a PR and double unders. And you actually start to succeed and put yourself in those uncomfortable positions. Again, we've kind of been talking about this the whole podcast so far, is putting yourself in uncomfortable positions in the gym is then when you can then translate that and apply that outside of the gym. It's the exact same thing, but it's just obviously you're working on your mental health, not your physical health. If you can kind of wrap your head around that, and it's more about having the awareness of what you're doing and being intentional about doing it. And let me say, you have to want to do the work because it's not going to do it for you. You have to dig down deep and you have to know what those triggers are, what those moments of weakness are, what actually is going to get you to respond the way that you don't want to respond, so that way you can get ahead of it and take that breath and respond with more higher EQ response. So that's, for me, it started unintentionally in the gym, and I was also unintentional with my physical fitness for the longest time. And I've now worked 10 years later to be more now focused on how I'm showing up, not just in the gym, but how I'm showing up in my life and how I'm getting stronger mentally as well.
I really love your example of that, because it's taking what we do in the gym and then the mind and body are always connected, but it's like when you actually can be aware of the connection and you have the perception that, hey, when I train my body, like in our mesocycles, and we do periodization, and you're doing PRs, and you have progressive overload, you're lifting more volume as you go forward in time. Your mind is always doing the same thing, right? Your mind is always going through that, if you will, mental progressive overload. That as you are tolerating more physical hypertrophy and your body and your muscle fibers are adapting to that, you're also, again, that fancy term, neuroplasticity, your mind is also doing the same thing. Are you aware of it or not? Are you aware that you actually have progressive overload of the mind, or, this neurological tolerance that you're building up? Because when you do, you're going to have it no matter what. Like, no matter what, if you go to the gym and you show up and you were doing 10s 2 years ago and now you're doing 50s, you're just a more tolerant person mentally, right? You're going to have some measured amount of mental resistance. Now, if you could actually be aware of that and you could apply emotional intelligence to it, meaning that you are aware that I am actually lifting my mind in a sense, the same time I'm lifting my body, and these two things are going together, well, then you're going to be able to notice that more in life because it's top of mind, out of sight, out of mind. Your perspective is that I'm doing that, so therefore I'm noticing it more. And now you start to get this cycle of momentum that I'm doing an activity, I set a goal toward it, I'm aware of it, I actually see what I wanted to be aware of, that, hey, this thing is actually working. I'm actually becoming less impulsive with my husband or my wife or my children, because I'm becoming more tolerant to pain in the gym. So as my body becomes more tolerant to pain physically, it's also becoming tolerant to pain emotionally. Oh, shoot, that's really working. Now I get this reinforced belief system that, hey, if I did it and it's working, well, hey, if I do it more, it could work even better. And you start to get this flywheel of momentum that happens, right? But the scary part is that it could also go the opposite way. If you're in the gym and you're not pushing yourself, if you 2 years ago you're lifting 10s and today you're lifting 10s, and you're not experiencing, you either go forward in life or you go backwards. So if you're the same, that means you're going backward, and you're not allowing yourself to physically adapt, well, then you're going to have that same thing mentally, and you're not going to mentally adapt either. And then you're going to say, oh, well, this doesn't work, and I told you it wouldn't work, and so therefore now my belief gets diminished. And when my belief is diminished, well, if I don't believe in it, then why the hell would I put any of my meaningful time, energy, and activity toward it anyway? And so then you put up less of an effort because you don't believe it, and then when you put up less of an effort, you get less results, and then that flywheel can go the exact opposite way. And so, this is a really important connection, this mind-body connection that's always there, but how would you say it's amplified when you actually can become aware of it. And that's what I hear you saying in your story is I started off just wanting the physical part, but I slowly saw the link to my neurological tolerance and a strong mind, mental toughness, mental resilience, however you want to language it. And now I'm so hyper aware of that both of those are going at light speed because I'm able to step in the gym every day and say, oh yeah, that 90-pound weight. Oh yeah. You scared me a little bit. Good. I like to be scared. No, we're going to play a Jocko clip here in a minute, cause that's one of his famous lines is like, oh, you're scared. Oh, you failed. Good. And he's like, oh, that hurt. That was painful. Good. So that's what I hear you saying. Yeah.
I think it goes back to also what you said at the beginning. What we say all the time in marketing is we sell our product is fitness, but we sell confidence. You get the confidence in the gym, but you have to have the self-awareness to then have that transcend outside of those four walls.
So Jocko says discipline equals freedom. Let's roll a clip from Jocko Willink.
Why does discipline equal freedom?
Because the more discipline you have in your life, the more freedom you will end up with. So if you lack the discipline to exercise and eat healthy, you will end up being a slave to disease. If you lack the discipline to work hard, save your money, you will end up a slave to finances. If you lack the discipline to manage your time correctly, you will end up with no free time. If you have self-discipline, if you have the discipline to save your money and work hard and invest your money properly, the discipline to exercise and eat healthy, you will end up with freedom. And I know it's a counterintuitive, it's contrarian, but if you want freedom in your life, you have to have discipline.
And that book I have read several times. Let's pull up the book cover on Amazon so that our friends at home can see the Discipline Equals Freedom book by Jocko Willink. It's a bestseller. You've probably heard of this guy before. If you haven't, here's a little introduction to him. He's a former military, highly decorated in the military, and I believe this was his first book. It has all of the military stories that he encountered that really shine light and add color to the contrarian view that discipline equals freedom. But he calls it his field manual. And I'm telling you, whether you enjoy kind of like hardcore military guys or not, this book it's so like he said, counterintuitive, because most people think discipline is like some set of handcuffs. It's some shackles. Like I got to be disciplined, therefore I can't do all these things. When discipline is really exactly what he says, discipline equals freedom. If you do not become disciplined in all these different areas of your life, then you're just going to be answering to the fact that you don't have it all figured out, and that's going to be worse pain than the pain of discipline itself. Have you ever read that book, Trisha, the Jocko book?
No, but I just made a note to read the Mindset one because you brought that up in another podcast, and I want to read that one, and I'm going to put this one on my list too.
We're giving you a bunch of homework today, people. All right? You got a bunch of homework here in the podcast. But I want to make sure that the things that I've used that have helped my life become better and more wonderful, that I share that with you, because, this isn't about, pushing the Burn products or the Burn book. I want you to go buy this amazing sweatshirt because it is so comfortable. And while you're reading your Discipline Equals Freedom book, this should just be a cozy one. And then you can, rip this off and you can have Trisha's.
And go to the gym.
Yeah, Trisha's shirt on. You can go to the gym. But I really want to bring you things that, I'm not affiliated to any of this stuff. I just want to bring you things that have made my life better. And I've listened to, hours and hours and hours of his content as well. And as a man, it really resonates with me. It may or may not as a woman. But anyway, I wanted to bring it to you here before we went to exercise and mental health clip by Peter Attia.
What we know is exercise is the single biggest elixir for brain health. And it's amazing how much more powerful it appears to be than nutrition, even sleep. And those things are very important, but exercise is in a league of its own. And we studied this question extensively about 8 years ago, and I initially just refused to believe this was the answer because it seemed too simplistic. I thought there had to be something more powerful. But as important as sleep nutrition are, exercise kind of takes the cake. And I suspect it's because it impacts so many systems: glucose disposal, insulin sensitivity, inflammation. It produces growth factors for neurons, BDNF. So the most important thing they can do for their brain health is to exercise. That's where you get into the, hey, if you could do 3 hours a week, that's great. If you can do 7 hours a week, it's even better.
And so we've always believed this at Burn since day one, that mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, that when you anchor your day in not just activity, not just exercise, I'm gonna say training, right? And a simple way to think about it again is, if you're demanding more out of yourself than you're normally willing to demand on a day, like, it's not fun. Going back to that, it doesn't necessarily make you happy to like have these muscles that are burning and this heart rate that is pounding. But you know that when you get up every day and you anchor yourself in your fitness routine here at Burn Boot Camp or whatever demanding training that you're doing, when you do that, there is no choice for the body, the mind, the spirit, your emotional self to increase and to get better every single day. And this has a compounding flywheel effect that the more you do it, the more fun it becomes because you see the results from it. And that's what we're really after is how we feel, the energy that we get from doing this thing. And all of a sudden, the pain of not doing it becomes more than the pain of actually doing it. And that's when you reach the threshold of fun. And that's when it becomes something you become addicted to. And so anchoring your day in fitness is so important. It's the easiest, most, like, you don't need to know neuroscience. You don't need to know exercise physiology. You don't need to know psychology. You don't need to know philosophy, any of these disciplines, to just show up to the gym, work harder than you kind of naturally want to do, and watch how that affects your life in all these ways. Peter Attia puts the science behind it, and you can dive into the science behind it for sure, but exercise over everything, anchor your life in exercise, and inevitably, even if you don't link mental, emotional, spiritual health to it at first, inevitably, it will make your life so much more wonderful that you will say, gosh, this place has changed my life, just like we hear with countless members at Burn Boot Camp.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about our transformation stories is they start out as I came to the gym to lose weight, as we all do, right? Or whatever it is. But then it ends up being I transformed my mind because I put myself through these challenging moments, just like we've talked about, that then gives you that growth mindset.
Okay. Wow. I really like that one. That's a good one. Shout out to Peter Attia for that one. Okay, let's talk about building habits that strengthen your mind. And we've done this pretty much the whole time here, but let's kind of go a little bit deeper into it. So let's talk about the difference between habit and routine. Routine and habit and routine. Pull up GPT for me, Chelsea. And while we're talking about this, I'm curious on what GPT says about habits versus routine. Type in, what is the definition of habits and what is the definition of routine, and how do they differentiate? And so we're going to listen to a Simon Sinek clip here in a moment when he talks about the habits of mentally strong people. But I wanted to give you my perspective on habits versus routines. So routines to me are habits, start as habits. And you could kind of think of a habit as being like planting the seed. So when you do something for the first time, you plant a seed. That seed is planted in the ground, and then a few days later, once you start doing that habit a couple more times, it's still a habit. It's now a seedling, so it's a little bit stronger. You're starting to get a little bit of momentum from it. We'll go to that in a minute. So you'll get a little bit of momentum from it, and then you'll keep doing it a few more days, and now all of a sudden, you see when the kind of the tree sprouts as a seedling and then opens up those first two kind of leaves. They're like the solar panels, and now it's getting sun, and now it starts to grow a little bit far and a little bit more. And now all of a sudden I'm 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months into this routine, and I planted the seed 5 months ago. I've been doing it, and now all of a sudden I'm starting to get a tree trunk that starts to form, and it starts to gain a little bit of bark on the outside, right? And now I've got this seed is now grown into something that has a little bit of structure to it. It's got some bark on the outside. It's got a little bit of outer shell. It's becoming more resilient. And then you keep that going and going and going, and you keep feeding it. You keep watering it. You keep it in the sunlight. And all of a sudden now, 2 years, 3 years later, you start to have an oak tree, right? You have this big immovable trunk that you can't, even the harshest hurricane can't blow down the oak tree. The oak tree is so strong. And once you've reached that 1 year, 2 year, 3 year habit building, right? You're constant. You don't just go from habit to ritual. You go from habit to being habitual into ritual. And you only reach rituality when you have this immovable tree trunk, like the trunk of an oak tree, that even the storms can't blow over. And so that's the way that I think about it. I used to buy into that whole, it takes 21 days to form a habit stuff. And like, okay, whatever. That doesn't work practically. You can say whatever you want about the science behind it. And, then you'll have 20 scientists who look at it 20 different ways and tell you something different or some different time frame. Like, okay, maybe it takes 21 days to establish some momentum, right? Or to actually get to the seedling to pop up so that you actually can see some remnants of a ritual. But it is not a ritual until it is immovable, until it is so anchored in your life that your life has become so wonderful from doing this every day that it's no longer what you do, it's who you are. And when it becomes who you are, it becomes a part of your identity and a part of your personality. Now we're talking ritual. And so I want us to just maybe consider here today on the podcast, like, where am I at in that lifespan of seed to oak tree, and from habit to being habitual to having rituals to being ritualistic, and to where it's not what you do that is your habits, but it's now part of your identity and who you actually become. And so let's look at GPT, Trisha, and then I'm going to kick it to you. The definition of a habit. Let's see how close GPT is to me. A habit is a behavior that is performed automatically or with little conscious thought, typically because it has been repeated frequently in the same context. A routine is a sequence of actions that are, I said ritual, not routine. Ritual, not routine. What is a routine? A ritual. A ritual. Or maybe I said routine. I meant to say ritual. Definition of a ritual. So you're going to see that, like, the difference between a habit and a ritual, what I think you're going to see is similar to what I'm saying, but anybody can trick themselves into having like habits that they, just are here today, gone tomorrow. Like, oh, it's a habit for me. Yeah. Well, is it? Because you stop doing it. And if it's a habit, you don't stop doing it. A ritual is a behavior, a series of actions performed with intention, mindfulness, and often emotional or rhythmic meaning. Okay.
Well, I think just to bring it back to bring this all to life, is we talk about, you can make going to the gym a habit, but tell me if I'm wrong here, Devin. And I know we talk about this on the podcast a lot, where we always recommend that you schedule your workouts. So then it becomes part of your ritual, part of your routine. You're putting the intentionality behind it because you're scheduling it into your routine, but you've already made it a habit. It's just now part of what your ritual is, so you can stay consistent. Is that bringing this full circle?
I think you're getting there. Let me offer up one additional piece to that. I think you're right, but I would say that once it's a ritual when you're unwilling to negotiate with it. Because we can have habits and routines, and we can say, oh, you know what? This thing came up today, or that thing came up today. Yeah. When I say anchor, what I really mean is ritual. That, hey, no. I'm actually scheduling all the things that, quote unquote, come up. I'm scheduling that around my workout. That it becomes so important to you, such a part of your identity, with almost with the same rigor that you are like Trisha Pena, like I am Devin Klein, like almost like I am this person. It's now a permanent definition of who I am, rather than something that I could let go if something else that was more exciting got in the way.
Got it. So like going back to the topic of this podcast, how we stay disciplined when motivation dies, that is how you stay disciplined, is by creating the ritual and creating it anchoring it down into who you are, because then you're going to give yourself that motivation is just going to come naturally.
Bam. That's it. That's the magic
Mic
right
drop.
there. Mic drop. That is the magic right there. And so I believe, Trisha believes, we all believe that, and I think this is logical, your health, the energy, there's like very few things in your life that actually really matter. There's very few things that actually really matter in life, okay? Health is at the top of my list unequivocally. Health, because why? Health through exercise, through sleep, through nutrition, that spits off the energy that you need to perform in the other areas of life that are very important to you, like your relationships, like self-actualization, becoming all that you can. You can't be all that you can be. You can't become everything that you were meant to be unless you have energy to get through the storms, unless you have the energy to get up when someone pushes you down or something pushes you down. Unless you have that wherewithal, that mental resilience, that physical fortitude, unless you have that, life is very hard. Life is mostly about suffering and how you tolerate the suffering and how you deal with it. I mean, as I've gotten older and now I'm 37, man, it was all good in my 20s. I wasn't really aware to how many times life hits you in a year. And then when people start passing away, and then your parents start passing away, and then you have like tragedy in business, and you have cycles in the market, and you have downturns, and you know people that lose their house or lose all their money, and you start to see like, man, yeah, there are some amazing things in life, and gosh, this feels good to be alive, and the sun's shining on my face. I'm so grateful for that. But wow, are there some real painful moments in life? And if you don't have anchors, if you're not anchored in that energy and that health, you're not going to have the vitality. You're not going to have the fortitude to push through these times that want to push you down and keep you down. And life will, and it must, because that is how the world turns. And so it is up to you to plant the seed of resilience and to water that seed every day through anchoring yourself in fitness. And that's my basic philosophy in life. And that's what we preach every day at Burn Boot Camp. And we hope that that's what you feel, that it's not just a workout, that you come for the workout, but you stay for that. You stay for the energy that you get and how it pours over into everything else in your life. And speaking of that, we're going to go into habits of mentally strong people. Let's listen to that Simon Sinek video.
Ladies and gentlemen, what separates those who thrive from those who crumble under pressure? It's not talent. It's not luck. It's mental strength. Mentally strong people are not born with an unshakable mindset. They build it, habit by habit, choice by choice, day by day. Today, I'm going to share with you 5 habits that mentally strong people practice. These habits aren't magic. They aren't reserved for the elite. They're choices that anyone can make, starting now. Mentally strong people don't point fingers. They don't look at the world and say, it's because of this or because of them that I'm in this situation. No, they take responsibility for their life. They understand that while they may not control the events that happen to them, they are always in control of how they respond to those events. They recognize that the power to shape their future lies in their hands. It's not easy to accept that responsibility, but the truth is, taking control is the only way to move forward and become who you were meant to be.
So, we've talked a lot on this podcast about mental resilience in everyday life. We've talked about the strategies that you can use in order to become a more mentally resilient person. We've also gave you some kind of undertones of the science behind it with terms like neuroplasticity, the ability for you to be able to change your brain, talking just about delayed reactivity, that gap between the thought and then the behavior that you exude. And we really hope that today what you learned was something that you can take away practically. We talked about how anchoring your fitness is so important to your everyday life. And, one of the things that I wanted to leave you guys with, and maybe Trisha, you can talk about your relationship in this regard too, is journaling. And this is one of the ways over the years that I have really tried to sort it out. you know, going through a lot as a young kid and kind of being through the fire, I've learned now that the fire is my friend. And I don't run from fires anymore because I have become a person who can stand in the face of the flames when other people are still scared of the fire burning them. I'm somebody now who can stand in the face of those flames with those other people behind me, and I'm willing to be burnt. I'm willing to face the heat. I'm willing to face the fire to protect other people from it and to show them that, hey, you can also be somebody that can stand in front of the fire as well. And the only way that I was able to go through this work on my own without a therapist, without a CBT expert, cognitive behavioral therapist, and I'm not doing it on my own either. Like I mentioned, I have a mental performance coach, Derek Grant, who really is helpful in this regard to me. And in the last 2 years, once I did all of the prerequisite work myself, has really helped me take it to the next level. So we all need a coach. We all need a trainer. We all need somebody who can be there that has our back unconditionally. And for the longest time, first, it was about me having my own back, and I would do that through journaling. I actually, in the notebook I have here, just, I have some podcast notes and things like that, but kind of give you some insight into what I do. So like I have books, and these books are how I've shaped Burn Boot Camp, and they're really my GSD or Get Stuff Done lists. But they also act as my journal. And I've got about 60 or 70 of these things at this point. It started with the famous purple notebook. Maybe I'll do a podcast on that one day and show you what's in the famous purple notebook. But see this little section here? It's bound by tape right on the bind here, because those 50 or 40 pages in there, that's all journal entry. This was 3 days where I had a lot on my mind, and I stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped eating sugar. I stopped doing things that were bad for me. And I started aligning my life to the words that I was saying. And I started doing that every day when I'm by myself, when I'm in private, when nobody's watching me. And before, I would do it 60% of the time, 70% of the time, and act like I was doing it the majority of the time, which wasn't actually the case. And so I had this aha moment where I really woke up to my new self, and I questioned, who am I? Who do I want to be? And is the behaviors and are the rituals that I have, is it aligned to who I want to become? And the answer was no. And so I sat down for 3 days, and this little piece of my notebook here is 50 pages full of writing, top to bottom, that really just explores and discovers myself. Now, before all these loose pages, this is just lists and ideas and C-suite meetings. And, I have like visuals, and, I do my vision boards, and I like, I'm an artist, so I like to draw, and I have like sketches in here, and it's just kind of my brain on paper, which is also a pretty fascinating thing to some people if you want to check it out sometime. But this piece here, that's bound by tape. I put a piece of tape over the top because I wanted to reserve this piece of my journal. When I go back through them, I wanted to recall easily, like as a bookmark, where are the times where I really went deep, and where are the times where I really started to explore myself. And so I wanted to just leave you with my little habit, or I guess ritual, if you were to use our terminology here, of journaling. And I don't do it every day or every morning, but there are times where I'll sit down for 3 straight days, and I'll really go deep, and I'll really explore my past and my future and who I am as a man and who I want to be. And oftentimes, I'll be misaligned from where I want to be and where I want to go and the man I need to become in life versus where I'm at today. And that's okay. And it should be that way if you're setting your goals the right way. And just what I realized over the years, that it's not about how ambitious I am or what goals I'm going to get. It's about who I'm becoming as I'm reaching those goals. Trisha, any parting words for you?
I mean, I just think mad props to you, Devin, because I know when I said earlier, it's hard to put in the work to increase your IQ and your mental resilience. I think I'm scared to journal. I'm not scared to confront my negative thoughts. I'm not scared to confront, the triggers that I have. But I have found that I can't put pen to paper yet. I know it's something I'm working on. So, I think that if you're like me, we'll get there. I'm not pressuring myself to get there. I think it's still what I do is I listen to podcasts like this. So I feel like if you're listening to this, you clicked on the title for a reason, because you know you have the intentionality of like wanting to get better, have that growth mindset. So that's where I am right now. Is I'm not journaling yet, but I am taking those moments to reflect and making sure that I am continuing to show up intentionally. I'm also trying to be more intentional to live my best life, like what you were saying, because we only have one life to live and we want to make it our best life ever. And I want my kids to have the best life ever. We talked about our why on our podcast before. So always going back to my why. So no journaling yet for me, but that's okay. I'll get there. I'll be able to face those I guess, negative thoughts one day.
Yeah, and this is all an individual process, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. Progress is happiness. Progress is happiness. So here's how you can progress this week, okay? You write down a moment this week that you bounce back from. Show yourself some gratitude for the things in your life that you're doing really, really well, because you're doing things well. I know I often will go to all the negative things in life. Write down some moments that you're proud of. You can practice some of that cyclical breathing with some breath work like Andrew Huberman showed us early on. You can start to connect your emotional and mental resilience to your physical workouts, and actually cognitively and through an emotional intelligence or EQ lens, actually start to connect what's already happening. And, pushing yourself through one hard workout, one more rep, just doing things that your mind says, I can't do, or that scares me. Lean into those things. Where are those things? Be aware for the triggers in life this week, guys. And if you enjoyed this episode, I want you to subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel, okay, the Burn Bootcamp Podcast on YouTube. We also have an Instagram handle. And we're going to be here with more psychology, more thinking differently, more eating differently, nutrition podcasts, more fitness, how we train. And really the intersection of really those things are what we love to come on here and talk with you about for Burn Bootcamp members, but also Burn Bootcamp members, friends, family, and those of you who are just fitness enthusiasts that like what we have to talk about. Share this with a friend. We're growing. We'd like to grow faster. You can help us grow faster by subscribing on YouTube. Please go do that right now. And please just send one of these episodes to a friend. I know episode 499 and 500 were about nutrition. We've had some nutrition episodes in the 500s that are really great, that have gotten some awesome feedback. Our last episode, or our last two episodes, were all about protein. So 506 was all about how to get enough protein in and why protein's important. And then 507, I gave you a case study of a member inside of a gym to apply that protein to you. And then this is 507, and we look forward to seeing you during Ask Devin Anything for 508. We'll take you out as we always do. 2 claps on 2. 1, 2.